All right, welcome to the 10th and final explainer in our cognitive architecture series. Over the last 9 sessions, we've debugged your daily habit loops, we've cleared out the cache of your digital distractions, and we've really worked to protect your mental RAM from that endless context-switching tax. So today, we complete your journey to sustained focus. We're going to permanently lock in all those behavioral changes we've discussed by fundamentally rewriting your behavioral operating system. This is our culminating look at the identity protocol, where we finally shift from a super fragile goal-oriented mindset to a resilient, systems-oriented identity. Let's make sure these upgrades actually last a lifetime.
Now, we've all been there, right? It's a universal frustration. Every January, we buy those expensive, new, leather-bound planners, we set incredibly ambitious 5 a.m. alarms, and we swear to ourselves, literally promise ourselves, that this time is going to be fundamentally different. But you know how it goes. By Wednesday of the following week, that alarm is just repeatedly snoozed, and by mid-February, the local gym is a total ghost town again. So why does this keep happening? Why do we experience this massive, heartbreaking gap between our best intentions and our actual everyday behavior?
Look, I need you to hear this. You do not lack discipline. Honestly, if you take away only one thing from this entire explainer, let it be this. You are dealing with a software glitch in your behavioral source code that is just severely draining your mental RAM. Relying on sheer willpower to force yourself to do something you haven't built a system for? It's exactly like trying to brute force a complex password. You might guess right once or twice just out of sheer, exhausting effort. But if you keep guessing, that continuous, high-friction effort depletes absolutely all of your system's energy. Eventually, it triggers a hard stop, and the system completely locks you out. That lockout? That is what burnout actually is. Your brain simply was never designed to operate on relentless willpower alone.
So think of this explainer as your final installation menu. We're going to quickly run through 1. The willpower glitch, 2. Goals versus systems, 3. To behavioral OS audit, 4. The identity protocol, and finally, 5. Locking in the code.
Section 1. The willpower glitch, a system bug, not lazy.
Okay, when you look back at your failed habits, it is absolutely vital to stop seeing them as moral failings and start seeing them as simple software bugs that just need a patch. For decades, we've treated human behavior like this big morality test, right? If you can't focus, well, you're lazy. Skip the workout, you're weak. But behavioral science tells us that willpower is actually a depreciating asset. It's a finite biological resource that drains steadily throughout the day as you make decisions and resist temptations. There's actually a fascinating study showing that judges grant parole far less frequently right before lunch, simply because decision fatigue has set in and the brain defaults to the easiest, safest option, just saying no. So, if your entire strategy for success relies on a resource that is mathematically guaranteed to run out by 3 p.m., experiencing an inevitable system crash by day 3 isn't a lack of character at all. It's just bad math.
The reality is your brain's hardware is completely fine. It's the operating system that needs a patch. Think about it. If a specific app on your phone keeps crashing every single time you open it, you don't yell at the phone and call it lazy, right? You don't assume the physical glass and silicon are morally flawed. No, you look at the code, you find the background error, and you run a software patch. Well, we're going to apply that exact same clinical, emotionless logic to your daily routines. Take the emotion completely out of it. It's just data.
Moving on to Section 2. Goals versus systems, a paradigm shift.
Consider the traditional goal-oriented mindset we've all been taught. We've been conditioned our whole lives to obsess over these huge, daunting goals. But goals are fundamentally just temporary outputs. Imagine your goal is to clean a deeply messy room. If you summon the sheer willpower to spend 3 hours scrubbing and organizing, hey, you have a clean room for today. But if you haven't changed the sloppy, chaotic habits that cause the room to get dirty in the first place, you'll be looking at a messy room again next week. You're basically treating a symptom, not the disease, leaving yourself exhausted and vulnerable to endless crashes. Now, contrast that with a systems-oriented identity. This is permanent behavioral code. When you focus on building a system, like adopting the core belief, I am a person who puts things back exactly where I found them, it scales automatically. You never have to frantically clean your room again, because your identity fundamentally rewrote your operating system to prevent the mess from ever occurring in the first place.
All right, Section 3, the behavioral operating system. Read your telemetry. Just like a failing application throws error codes, your bad habits are actually giving you incredibly useful data. Let's look at 3 major inputs that routinely crash your system. First up, environmental triggers. If your smartphone is sitting face up on your desk while you're trying to execute deep work, even if it never buzzes, it's draining you. Your brain is expending active, subconscious energy just suppressing the urge to check it. It creates this phantom notification that heavily taxes your filtering system. Second is the friction trap. Let's say you want to run every morning, but your running shoes are buried in a dark closet behind heavy boxes. That physical friction psychologically defeats you before you even wake up. The hurdle is just too high for an early morning groggy brain. Finally, biological inputs. If you're relying on processed sugar for quick energy, you're causing massive blood glucose spikes followed by devastating dips. That creates intense brain fog and a literal hardware crash. You absolutely cannot outwill bad inputs.
Which brings us to Section 4, the identity protocol, the software patch.
Now, I want to be clear, this isn't some mystical self-help stuff. This is a formal clinical installation that transitions you from temporary trying to permanent being. The identity protocol asserts that true behavior change is, at its absolute core, identity change. The best way to understand this is through a brilliant insight popularized by James Clear. Imagine 2 different people trying to quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, the first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." That is goal-oriented. It implies they still deeply believe they are a smoker who is currently just trying to resist temptation. But the second person says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." That is a systems-oriented identity change. It's a massive shift in perspective, right? The identity protocol forces your actions to align with a completely new belief about who you fundamentally are, taking exhausting willpower out of the equation entirely.
So here is the concrete, step-by-step technical audit to bring your brain fully back online. Step 1, read the telemetry. You have to honestly, ruthlessly identify what's crashing you. The phantom notifications, the hidden friction, the afternoon sugar crashes. Step 2, patch the bugs using algorithmic friction. This means making your bad habits technically and physically difficult to execute. You don't just try to ignore your phone, you use an app blocker that physically locks you out of dopamine sinks during your deep work hours. You create a literal, unbreachable barrier. Conversely, you remove all friction from your good habits. Put those running shoes right next to your bed so you literally trip over them in the morning. And step 3, adopt the identity. You stop obsessing over the arbitrary outcome you want to achieve, and you start acting in daily alignment with the type of person you actually wish to become.
Finally, Section 5, locking in the code, deployment schedule. This timeline mathematically increases your probability of success, completely replacing chaotic effort with a fully automated, optimized workflow. Let's walk through why these milestones actually matter. On day 1, you reset your baseline by debugging the dopamine deficit. This means actively abstaining from high-velocity digital inputs in the very first hour of your day, which repairs your brain's reward pathways and stops that immediate craving for distraction. By day 14, you are removing algorithmic friction. You've actively designed a physical environment where your good habits are the path of least resistance, proving once and for all that smart environment design always beats brute force willpower. By day 21, because your mental RAM is no longer being drained by terrible inputs, you are seamlessly executing 90-minute deep work sprints. Your focus is sustained, it's deep, and by day 30, you are running the identity protocol on full automation. You are no longer trying to be focused or productive. The new code has successfully compiled.
I'll leave you with this. Stop obsessing over the finish line. Look really closely at your daily habits, audit your environment, and ask yourself a very serious question. Is my current code compiling into the identity I actually want to inhabit? If the answer is no, it's time to stop feeling guilty and start running the patch. Take back control of your cognitive architecture. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. So, who will your system build you to be tomorrow?